Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Gail Murdoch, CEO of Nimbus Software, and I'm really excited to share with you today what we've been building for the New Zealand construction industry. At Nimbus, we've been here for 40 years, and we've got the experience to work alongside contractors right here in New Zealand. And we haven't just observed the industry from the outside, we've been in it, understanding firsthand the realities of managing your projects, controlling your costs, and dealing with disconnected systems that simply don't talk to each other. For more than 8 of those years, we've been also part of the JDM Technology Group, a global leader in construction software. And JDM brings together close to 40 specialist companies working in construction and contracting across the world. And rather than leaving all of that expertise sitting in silos, they have unified it. And we've brought the best ideas, the proven functionality, and decades of experience from the group to build a single platform. So we have one system, one source of the truth, enabling real-time, informed decision-making across your entire organization. So Converro by Nimbus is our expression of that vision. Converro is also scalable. It's a scalable ERP platform designed to give you the clarity, control, and visibility you need so you can run your projects and your finances with confidence. And that's what we're here to show you today. Let's get into it.
This is a sample of a business analytics dashboard. What we're looking at are examples of what we offer. These are intended to provide an overview of the different elements we can bring together to display your data in a way that's meaningful to your business. First, we have a profit and loss statement. This is configured to show the position for the current period compared to the year to date. If we scroll to the bottom, we can see our profit. You'll see that there are blue values, and these are links. They allow you to drill into the underlying transactions that build up the balance on the dashboard. If we go back on the browser, we can move to our next item. This is debtor invoices due this month. When we open this, we're opening an inquiry grid. Inquiry grids are an incredibly powerful tool for data analysis. The fields on screen are linked to what's called a view. You can see here that I'm using the STL aged analysis. Each individual user can have a different view based on their preferences. On this view, I've applied formatting to highlight transactions based on their aged balances. Transactions due more than 2 months ago are red, italicized, and have a warning symbol. Transactions aged between 1 and 2 months have a different warning symbol, and current transactions have no formatting. To the left of the grid is what we call the field selector. In here are further tools to enhance your data analysis. There is a large list of fields at your disposal, and they can be added to the grid simply by finding them, ticking them on, and refreshing. You can see once I've done that, my order number is visible on the grid and has inherited the formatting of the line. If you're an Excel fan, the grid data can be exported. We pop over to the Data tab and we see our options. I'm going to export Excel with totals. I simply click that option and the file downloads. Once it's downloaded, you can do anything you like with it. When we're finished reviewing these transactions, we close the app and return to our dashboard. We can now look at the value of debtor invoices due this month compared to the creditor invoices due this month, and we can get a feel for the potential cash position we're going to be in. On the second line, we have pie charts. These are showing the aged receivables and the aged payables analysis. Hovering the mouse over the segments on the aged receivables, we can see the total for that segment as well as the total overall balance. Our aged payables item is linked to creditor payment entry. We could enter a creditor payment to update the aged analysis, and then that would be available right away. Creditor invoices on hold is linked to a different app again. When we click on the item, the app that opens allows you to manage the hold status of the creditor invoices. The changes we can make here could be update the hold status of the entire invoice, update the value that's on hold, and update the reason why the invoice is on hold. We're going to modify the reason, save that, and close the app. I'm going to do a manual refresh here, and you can see that our change is immediately available. The dashboards are set with a predetermined refresh interval, so the updates happen automatically. I have another browser tab open with a job-specific dashboard. Here we can see I've highlighted some jobs based on their profitability. We've collated the value of committed costs across all jobs, and we can see our outstanding debtor balances by job. We also see information about our retentions by job for the customers and our retentions by account for our subcontractors. This is just sample items that will allow you to see what we can offer, and we can work with you to configure these in a way that works best for your business. A good place to review the flow of information through the system is the job inquiry. We're going to focus on the Pebbly Hill new build, and we'll follow the update of the job performance as we post transactions. We're starting with a very simple inquiry showing the current profitability of the job. The gross contribution is a quick summary of the job profit. This includes all revenue and all costs less retentions. The revenue here is split between charge-up invoices in the invoice goods column and the value of claims to customers. This field is called Claim GVWD, which stands for the gross value of work done. These two values combine into the total billed field. We can see this value is a link, and if we click on it, we get a list of the transactions that build up this value. From the drill, we can go one step further. We can drill into the transaction type to preview the invoice that was sent to the customer. Simply preview here, and here's what the customer received. Once we close that, we can go back on the browser, and we're back to our list of transactions, and then back on the browser again, and now we're back at the job inquiry. Our costs here are broken down by cost category. These are a preset level of analysis on company, and this is set when your system is implemented. Clicking on the values drills into the list of the underlying transactions. A quick option to change the data here is to summarize by the transaction type. Open the field selector and click on the name of the field. This will display the option to summarize by transaction type. As soon as we click on it, the grid is updated to show our summarized data. Back on the browser again and return to the job inquiry. A different way to review the costs is to show the breakdown by cost category, resource code, and operation code. Click to highlight the job and then click Analyze Costs. The inquiry is set to display the costs at the first level of operation code. If we click the More button, we get more details. By default, we're not viewing any resource code breakdown. By clicking More on the resource code level, we get to the cost category level. And if we click More again, we get down into the resource code level. Note that as we're increasing the number of resource levels, the number of rows on screen is also increasing. Back in the job inquiry, there are some other fields of interest: commitment and outstanding commitment. Commitment is the committed costs. These are costs that have been incurred and either have been paid or are due for payment. Outstanding commitment is the value of orders and contracts that haven't been converted into costs or have only partly been costed. We can drill into the outstanding commitment value to review the order and contract lines. Clicking on the order number will take you to the actual order. Now, if we go back to the job inquiry, we see that to the right of the committed costs are the contract values. These represent the value of the contract we've signed with our customer. The contract price is the original contract, while the adjusted contract price is the original contract plus the value of variations. The values in the job inquiry can be further refined within this screen. We can use the Set Period Ranges option to change the data included in the job inquiry. Click on the job in the grid to highlight and then click Set Period Ranges. By default, the job inquiry runs for the total of the job. We can change this to year to date, which is the current financial year. Tick the box and then click Set Criteria. When that closes, we simply refresh the grid and we can see that the information displayed has changed. This is a very summarized version of the job inquiry, and we can review it in more depth with more fields at a later point. When we create a purchase order, we have some options on the header. First, you can see that my purchase order has been generated with a number prefixed by the word draft. This is because I have purchase order number security enabled. It's optional and it simply blocks the creation of an acceptable purchase order number until after the PO has been approved. As with many screens, you can see the Submit button at the top. If we have workflow attached to purchase orders, the Submit button sends the purchase order to the approval queue to be approved before the proper purchase order number is generated ahead of sending it to the supplier. In this case, we're creating a purchase order directly to the job. So if I put my job number in here, we can see that the job name and address are now automatically populated. The other option would be to purchase it to a location. That could be as stock on hand, or we can have a job set up as a location. The only other compulsory field on the header is the supplier. We're buying this from our local depot, and once we select the supplier code, we can see the supplier name and the address populated as well. You'll see along the top, we've got a tab for attachments. You'll be used to seeing these either as attachments or documents tabs in various parts of the system. And these form part of the underlying document management system delivered as part of a standard implementation. I've had an email conversation with the job manager discussing this order, and I can attach that thread here by simply dragging and dropping. If we go back to the Details tab, we can see there are actually a lot of fields on here. I'm not going to cover them all today because that's going to be covered in a more in-depth purchase order demo. However, I would like to bring your attention to two. These are the resource code and the operation code. As we know, resource and operation codes are compulsory on job cost transactions, and if we load them up on the header here, they will automatically populate on the lines when we add them. To demonstrate that, I'm going to save, and you can see once I've saved, I've got the ability to add lines. I can simply click add, type in my product code, and you can see that the resource and operation are populated, and it's simply a matter of adding the quantity. But this purchase order is going to be a little bit different. I've got a very organised quantity surveyor who's done the costings on this job and knows exactly what we need from the supplier at this stage of the job. I'm going to delete my manual line, and then I'm going to click the import button. The vast majority of transaction entry screens have an import button. The import file only needs the compulsory fields with the column headings matching those that we see on the grid. The order of the fields doesn't matter. I'm going to drag and drop my file in here. You can see we've got the information on screen, and we click Show Import Data. This is what is actually going to be imported. I now click Validate, and this checks the information in the file. So this would tell us if there's any columns in the file that don't exist in the grid, or if there's any invalid information. Invalid information might be a product code that doesn't exist or a unit that doesn't exist. When we're happy with our file, we simply click Validate and Import, and it does all the work for us. We close that, and we see our lines are here now. If we needed a bit more real estate on the screen, we can click this little arrow here to hide the header information. Even though the purchase order lines have been imported, we can still edit them. We could change the resource or the operation code, the quantity, or the price. We're not going to do that because our QS has done all of the hard work. If we want to get the header information back, we simply click on the dot and drag that down. Now I'm going to submit this to the workflow. Because I'm the boss, it's going to automatically approve, and we can see here that the purchase order number has been generated. I've also enabled the option that automatically inserts the job number as a segment of the purchase order number, and this can make life easier for your admin staff when the invoice comes in if it doesn't reference the job. Now that we are fully approved, we could email this away to the supplier, and we can certainly preview it on the screen here. You can see here we've got all of our information and our total, and we've got room for comments and notes. The next step is to have a look at the job inquiry. We can see before we refresh it, we've got our outstanding commitment of $24,000. We simply refresh that, and we can see the value of our outstanding commitment has increased by the value of our purchase order. So it's nice and quick. There's nothing else you need to do in order to get these values updating. The next step now is to wait for the invoice from the supplier. We get very prompt service from this company, so they've already delivered the goods and sent us the invoice. I have the invoice register open in another browser tab, so we can switch to that now. Before we add the new invoice, we can see the invoices that have entered previously. Some are posted, some are submitted to workflow, and others are unprocessed. You can see by the different colours that these invoices have different statuses. We received the invoice in question as an attachment in an email, so we can simply drag the PDF into our screen and load that in. When this loads, the invoice will open on screen, and on the left-hand side, we have what's called our invoice header. Because this invoice relates to a purchase order, we're lucky in that we can simply enter the purchase order number. We can find that in our list here. And that automatically populates the supplier and the job. If we didn't have a purchase order number, we would have to add the supplier and the job manually. Once those details have been entered, it's simply a matter of entering the details, the date. You can see that the due date populates automatically. This is based on the payment terms that we've set on the supplier, and then we populate the invoice number, Z10113, and the total is our 6858.83, and that calculates the goods and the tax values. We scroll down slightly further on the header and we can see some other fields. The discount and the withholding tax would populate if we had these items set up on the supplier, which we don't. So when we're happy here, we can click Show Cost Allocation. When the cost allocation is generated from a purchase order, we can see all of our lines here on screen. In our case, our Kiwi has priced this work perfectly, so we can simply look at the invoice itself and enter the quantities. We receive 15 of those. 5 there. And 35 there. We can see now that the cost status has changed to fully costed, and that's because the total of our lines matches the goods value on our invoice header. At this point, we could put the invoice on hold if we had any questions about it, or if we had received all of the goods, we could tick Close Purchase Order. I'm just going to submit this now. For invoices, we do have approvals enabled. So I'm going to go to my approvals, which I have open in a different browser tab, and I'm going to refresh that now. You can see that the invoice is now here for my approval, and I can move the fields around so I can give myself more room. At this point, I could change any of the costing fields, but I'm not going to. I'm simply going to approve. I'm allowed here to enter a comment, and I will say approved per schedule. The comments allow people to track what's happening and when things were done, and this is particularly important if invoices are being rejected. To reject an invoice, you simply click on it and hit reject. Let's say incorrect POs there and submit that. And that sends it back to the administration team, and then they can go back to the supplier and get the information that's needed. Once approved, the invoice is posted. I can switch back to my Job Inquiry browser tab and refresh it. When I do that, we can see that our values have updated. Our outstanding commitment has been reduced by the value of the invoice, and our total costs have been updated to include the value of the invoice. Variations are managed within the existing contracts for both customers and subcontractors. Schedule contracts or orders can be maintained from either the app that lists all the contracts or from within the job setup itself. The benefit of maintaining scheduled contracts or orders from within the job setup is that you can see the position immediately without the need to filter a large amount of information. We're going to review the subcontractor scheduled contracts, but the underlying process is almost identical for the customer contracts. We're in the Job Setup app, and we can see the existing contracts in the Subcontractor Orders tab. On screen, we immediately get a breakdown of the order values split between the original order, the detail variations, and the simple variation orders. As you can see, there are two types of variations available on schedule contracts. Simple variations are simply a line added to the original schedule with a variation indicator. Detail variations are essentially an entire contract that's attached to the original contract. We're going to open the contract we have for Herbert Warkworth and look at how these are added. Our original contract with Herbert covers two segments of work defined by different operation codes. He's constructing some walls in the shared spaces and he's lining the partitions. In the course of his work, the customer has reviewed the plans and would like to change the finish of the suspended ceilings. We click to add a new line and we can see that the VO No field is available for edit. This is the field that indicates whether or not the line is a variation. We add our detail and our value and we give it our operation code here. As soon as we've done that, this line is now indicated as a variation. As such, when we analyse the transactions, this will be noted there. The other type of variation is a detail or schedule variation. The customer visited the site and was so impressed with Herbert, they'd like to now add a mezzanine level to the space. This work encompasses multiple aspects of the work segments, and the schedule variation allows us to deliver that level of analysis while keeping the work linked to our original contract with Herbert. Click the Get VO button to add a new schedule variation or manage existing ones. We're adding a new one here, and you can see that when we do that, the details on the header have been pre-populated from the main contract. The app itself will look familiar. It's the same app used for the main contract with some subtle differences. We can build the details of this in the grid. Once we save, we can now add details to this. I'm going to use the import because I have a file with my details in it. I'm going to drag and drop it. I'm going to show the data and I'm going to validate and import. Once we've done that, we've got our total for our variation and we can now add the signed contract to the attachments tab. I've got that in here and I can drag and drop it. This now becomes part of the underlying document management system and is accessible anytime you can see this order or transactions. After the variation is completed, it will now be available in the payment claim section. We close the variation and return to the list of scheduled variations and close that to return to the original order. When we close that, we come to the list of orders and you can see that the values have been updated based on the information that we've just added. We offer multiple ways in which you can analyse retentions, those held on you by your customers and those you withhold from your subcontractors. The sample retention dashboard gives you an immediate breakdown of the retention balances by account, by job, and by contract. The retention by contract analysis takes retention analysis to another level, giving you the full breakdown when the same customer or subcontractor is used multiple times on the same job. These items allow you to drill straight into the underlying transactions that build up the balance on screen. From there, you can go as far as reviewing the line level details by clicking on the transaction type. Here, we can preview the actual document sent to the subcontractor. When we're finished, we can close the preview and go back on the browser. This returns us to our transaction listing, and back on the browser again will return us to our dashboard. From the item that lists the contracts, we can drill into the contract details. The contract isn't editable from this drill, but there are important details like the overall contract value, any attachments or documents, and the breakdown of the retention bands. In another browser tab, I have my subcontractor retention liability inquiry open. Here we can define the start and end financial periods for the retention analysis and see the opening, the movement, and the total value. I can drill here into the underlying transactions, and I can go back on the browser and then preview the statements. We give our subcontractors a full breakdown of their retentions, as well as a list of the transactions for the financial periods covered by the inquiry.